morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is the town hall meeting. I'm going to have to get used to that new name. We've been known as the Public Affairs Roundtable for maybe 20 years or so, or a little longer, and we've obviously changed the location today, and looking forward to seeing a little different mix in the crowd today. A great crowd, and we're glad to have you with us. We enjoy questions from the audience, and we will save time at the end for you all to ask questions, and I'm going to leave it at that. And we look forward to a good discussion. Our guests this morning are Mayor Rogers Anderson, Dr. Mike Looney, Superintendent of Schools here in Williamson County, and Matt Largen, the president of our of Williamson, Inc. We were talking about the mature guys still call it the chamber, and so, but our title is Williamson, Inc. And Matt's doing a great job leading us. We now have had our 5-year anniversary, I think, as a combined chamber, and it's going well, and appreciate the effort Matt has done. As many of you know, there's a sales tax referendum on February the 6th, and we're now having early voting for that. And these three gentlemen have been leading a, shouldn't call it a dog and pony show, but a discussion around the county about the sales tax referendum. And we asked them to do a special session of the town hall meeting here to give us a little better feel for what the need is behind that effort, what the financial discussion is that we got to here, and then Matt will tell us a little bit about why the business community is so interested in this subject. Dr. Looney, if you would, you're a master at telling us about the school system, but tell us about the growth, what it's looking like. This is a 10-year plan, and I went on the website, but I could only find a 5-year plan on the website, but this one goes out even further. So tell us how that, how we got to this need, if you will.
Well, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here. What a beautiful complex. We're all proud of it. So the 10-year plan is a really new development. This is the second year that we've updated the 10-year plan, and it's really a result of an extended conversation that we've been having with the county commission, in particular the school board and the county commission, thinking about, how do we manage the growth that we're experiencing in Williamson County schools. The long story short is based on projections from the University of Tennessee, our local planners, and the Nashville office. We believe that we're going to grow by 20,000 students or so in the next decade. This year we've grown by, as of January, we've grown by about 1,350 students. And obviously it has a compounding effect as you get bigger. So, the reality is, if that's true, if all of those projections are correct, and our historical growth pattern is right, then we have a significant challenge on our hands. How do we prepare for those students, both as it relates to the capital costs of giving them classrooms and instructional spaces, and then two, hiring staff members and teachers and aides and bus drivers and lunchroom workers to serve those students. So we have traditionally presented a 5-year capital plan to the county commission, but the school board wanted to give them a longer-term vision of what our long-term needs are. And the reality of it is we need about 17 new campuses. If you look at the growth projections, the reality of it is most of those new campuses happen to fall in the first 6 years based on the capacity of our existing infrastructure. So the reality of it is it takes us about 2 years to build a school. That's once the funding mechanism is in place. It generally takes us about a half a year to go through the funding process with the county commission and the school board. So we're behind schedule. We've known this. We've been working at this with the county commission for a number of years. The reality of it is we're kind of at a crossroads where we need to act relatively soon, or it's going to get worse. I can tell you we all should be very proud of what's happening in our schools, and it's not because of my work, certainly it's because of the teachers and the students that serve. But the reality is your children, your grandchildren, the citizens of Williamson County are getting a world-class education right here in Williamson County schools. The average graduate in Williamson County earns $60,000 in college scholarships. The average student. In the last 8 years, our students will have earned $1 billion in college scholarships. We spend locally just under $6,000 per pupil. The rest of it comes from the state. So the reality of it is, for the investment that we're incurring in Williamson County for public education, the ROI, the return on investment, is unparalleled. And so if you match what we've been doing with what we need to continue to do moving forward, you can see it's a pretty straightforward process. The reality is now we have students that are having class in halls, folks. We literally have coat closets that have been converted into small instructional spaces. We have lunch programs that start at 9:45 or 10 o'clock in the morning and go to 1 just so we can get all the students to the serving lines and have them seated. Honestly, we don't have enough seats in the lunchroom to serve kids, so they're sitting on the floor. They're finding spaces to eat. And so I have argued and will continue to argue that this community demands more of its public education system than to have kids sitting on the floor for lunch. And if that's true, then we need funding. My job is not to come up with a funding mechanism. My job is to talk to you about the need. The need is we need more schools and we need them now.
Dr. Looney, what was the increase in enrollment for 2017-18 school year over the previous year?
As of the end of the first semester, we were at 1,350 odd. Now we had 28 new students enroll the first day of the second semester. So the truth of it is we grow 20 or 30 students a week. So by the time the school year ends, we'll be close to the 2,000 mark, I suspect.
How does that compare to the past few years? Is that
a little bit higher? We're accelerating. During the downturn in the economy, we slowed down a little bit. We're really just now getting back to the pre-2009 growth trajectory that we had. But as with everything else, once the ball starts rolling, it's really hard to stop. And so the ball is picking up momentum, and we see more and more students coming because the reality of it is, and Matt will say this, the school district, in my view, is the calling card for Middle Tennessee. And so people move here specifically, for the school system oftentimes. I just recently sold a house, and they moved here from New Orleans, and they moved here specifically because of the school district. And so we have more and more families doing it.
That's crazy. Now, looking at the plan that I have seen in print, it looks like about one new elementary school a year over the next several years or close to it. In a lot of middle schools, but no high schools, maybe one high school over the next 10. How does that shake out? Why so many elementary schools?
Well, our elementary schools are designed to hold about 850 students. So if you do the math, if you grow by 1,500 students, that's almost 2 complete elementary schools, actually. Of course, they don't always come in nice, neat packages. One of the things that the county commission and the school board have agreed to do is to re-examine the size of our schools to see if enlarging schools would be beneficial to the community in relates to how much, the cost, the efficiency of doing business. And so we have made a determination that our high schools can increase in size. And so we're basically going from 1,650 student high school to 2,200 student high school. So part of this plan is, in addition to adding new buildings, is to add instructional space into existing buildings. And I'll use Ravenwood as an example. We plan on adding a 2-story structure on the Ravenwood so that we can add additional students there long term and then replicate that process throughout the county. Brentwood High School is another example of that. Brentwood High School and Brentwood Middle School both are going to be expanded by a 3-story building sandwiched in between the 2 existing buildings. And so we're trying to add capacity wherever it's feasible. Page High School, Page Middle School, the same thing.
Okay. We'll, I'm sure, have a few more questions about that at the end. But Mayor Anderson, you're the money man here, and explain to us, not in 10 words or less, but explain to us how we got to a sales tax referendum.
Well, good morning, Dave, and thanks for the opportunity to kind of continue this education process that we are doing all over the county. Over the last couple of weeks, the three of us, either collectively or individually, have gone to many, many places and tried to educate the general public. The actual journey that we've had has been a very informative journey for me, in that you get the opportunity to kind of explain Civics 101. The county commission, the school board members have studied this over the last several years, and in October of 2017, the county commission body, which is your funding body, agreed to say, let's let the people decide how they want funding to be. As you will see from the handout that Matt's got, or I think it was shown in the back, there's very few ways that the county commission can generate money to pay for schools. One of those is property tax, the other one is the sales tax increase, and the other one is a gluttony of other things such as the wheel tax and some of the other taxes and fees that you have. But in the numbers that the school board and Dr. Looney has asked for, almost $500 million. That's some serious funding, and you need to have a plan to pay for things before you start purchasing all of these items. And that's what we're doing. I think it's important to understand the way the mechanics, the way the ball bounces with a bag of money, as I've seen. You saw the presentation. The money that is distributed is very important into why we got to this point. So if you'll allow me just a little time, and I'll try to explain this to the best of my ability. If you have questions, certainly ask them. Under state law, the schools' pot of money, they do not pay for bricks and mortar, building of schools. They don't pay for the improvements of the capital improvements of those schools. That's a function of the county government. Now, many of us think that they're all one, all your tax dollars, whatever, but they're divided. And so when Dr. Looney every year presents their budget, the school board has gone through the money that is allocated from the property tax side goes into and help pay for those operations of schools. The bricks and mortar, though, is still over on the executive branch, our side, to help pay for these new schools. So if you'll allow me to give a very simple illustration, and let's assume that you go into Franklin and you have $10 worth of tax generated. The current tax of the state and the local is 9.25. That's 7%. Goes back to Nashville, which Sam and many of the people here, and some running, will have jurisdiction over. They take that money and they distribute it out to our 95 counties and to all of our, a lot of other services. So on our example, we've got $10. We're going to round off. We're going to say $7 of that goes straight to Nashville, Tennessee. So we got $3 left of that $10 that tax that was generated in our city. $1.50 of that money goes directly to the school's budget.
Operating budget.
It goes directly into him under a line called sales tax. So we got $1.50 left. Where does that go? That money goes to the cities of wherever it was originated. So if you shop in Franklin, that $1.50 goes to their municipalities. If you shop in Spring Hill or any of our 6 cities, wherever it was originated, goes directly into their coffers. So I ask you to go back to my statement that I made.
Doesn't sound like there's any left to build schools with.
There's no money coming over to county general to pay for the schools. So it's not a very good thing for the county to stand up here and try to promote a sales tax if we can't pay for something.
That's usually not good for a politician to be doing
It's not good
that.
for politicians, you're right. So here's the thread that helped bind all this together. We went to each of the 6 cities and said, would you be willing to give up that increase of, in our example, $1.50? Would you be willing to give up your monies through a memorandum of understanding, an agreement between the cities and the counties for a period of time so that we could help pay for these schools that are being generated? All 6 cities agreed to do that. Now, I should say, one of the cities, Fairview, was already at the maximum of 9.75. But they made arrangements internally to help be on that memorandum of understanding components. So now, if the people, through this education process we're going through, decide that they want this increase from 9.25 to 9.75, the memorandums of understanding are in place. Those sales tax dollar increases come over to the county, and the county can help pay for these schools. It'll generate somewhere between $22 and $25 million a year based on some past sales tax information we have. And after 3 years, it stays within the cities. Your logical question would be, well, why didn't you go for it for 5 years or 10 years or permanent? It's oftentimes very hard to negotiate, but this is what we settled on. And I'm very thankful and very grateful for our cities for them doing this arrangement. Otherwise, we would not be having this conversation.
Right. Now, there's apparently some bonds that'll roll off 3 years down the road that
That's correct.
will free up some other funds.
All of our, I don't mean all, but 99% of our indebtedness on our schools is done through 20-year notes. And just like you have a mortgage on your home, you do a 15 or 20, 25, 30 years. We do all of our mortgages, we call them bonds, on a 20-year note. So we've got several of them rolling off. Dr. Looney doesn't need all of the money immediately to start building schools. So some of them will come in 3 years, 2 years, 4 years. It's a process that he's going through to get the schools either renovated, enlarged, or build new schools. So our team of people, Stevens, Sam Peru, Bassberry and Sims, and our own internal people, I think this is one approach to help us, because it will, after a period of 3 years, will generate about $65 million more in revenue because of the city's efforts, and then after that period of time, then we will have paid off. We feel like we're in a comfortable position to continue on with this program.
You did a very courageous thing last year, I think, by pushing through a $10,000 per house additional impact fee on new home construction in the county. That's now tied up in court. But how much additional revenue a year will that impact fee generate if it's successful?
So about 2.5 years ago, we've been battling. In fact, I was cleaning over the holiday. I was kind of taking some things out of the closet, and a long time ago there was an article written in our local papers of how school funding was important. We want to have to find some solutions to this. It's amazing to me over the last many years that we've been dealing with this growth issue in our community. it does continue to center around schools. It centers around how do we pay for those things. And when you think about the different ways over the last several years that we've tried to generate revenue, there have been a very large amount of effort put into. Many of you may not know there is a huge difference between state and county and city in the way you do your governance. Cities can create ordinances and oftentimes get things done, create revenue a lot quicker than counties can. States give all the authority to the county mayor or county executive and to the county commission. That whatever the law is under Tennessee Code annotate, that's how we have to operate. And so during that period of time, and particularly over the last 2.5 years that you made reference to, we hired an outside consultant that did a study of educational impact fee. What does it actually cost for a family to move in to Williamson County from outside the area? What does that really cost us? Bricks and mortar, operational, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That figure came back at approximately $23,000 to $25,000 it costs per child that moves into Williamson County. That report is available. It was online. I'm sure it's still online to look at that report in depth. So the county commission, again, they're the funding agent. They're the authority for this. And that particular night, the vote was 23 to 1 to begin an educational impact fee that was based on the square footage of a home, of the heating and cooling of the home. That also took into consideration that there was a phase-in period. We were going to look at $1 per square foot on heating and cooling, and it varied. If you had a 5,000 square foot home, this was your price. If you did a 3,000 square foot home, this was another price, and et cetera. So the larger the home, the more impact you made to the community, the more it cost you at the time that you received your permit. There were many of us went out on the roads on forums and having discussions with our community trying to explain what we were going to do. So that was approved, I think it was September or October. We said we'll phase in March, give you some time to plan. You've gone through the planning commission and things like that. So we're going to start this in March, and then from March through August, 6 months, it'll be 50 cents on the dollar, letting people get into it. And as we got closer to that deadline of September 1 to have the full dollar, the lawsuits were brought, and so thus we had to stop the process of planning to use that money. Now the fees are still there. They cannot be used, will not be used until the courts determine who is correct. I'll put it that way.
My understanding is you've collected about $6 million under that plan already.
It's somewhere between 6 and 7 million. I have not looked at it in the last day or two, but our growth continues to happen in our community. I see Bo is here through Williamson County Realty, can probably tell you how many homes they are. Yeah. And they also have a line of how many square feet. So what's that money? If we're successful in court, then we'll have some extra money, but it'll be a period of time until that process goes through the courts. But
I guess the point I'm trying to bring out is that it's not all on the sales tax. It's being pieced together from several sources, and a significant part of it is coming from the new homes that are sold.
That is correct.
As we go forward. Now, the sales taxes impact somebody besides the residents of Williamson County. That's my favorite part of it. But talk about that just briefly, if you will, and how we, I think 28% is the figure I've seen that is actually going to be paid by folks that don't live here. And the state has a formula that they use to allocate money. Dr. Looney, how much per pupil do we receive per year from the state under that BEP formula?
Well, it fluctuates every year, but approximately $3,000.
And how much do the other counties around us receive?
Well, once again, it fluctuates across the state. When money flows from here to Nashville, the amount of money that we get back for schools is basically 60 cents on the dollar. The other 40 cents is distributed to other school districts that the state has determined has less of ability to pay locally for schools. And so the reality is we're pushing more money out than we're receiving, and it's on the school side, right? So so as an example, the state provides a certain number of teachers based on the number of students that we have, but they only pay 60% of what the state has determined is the appropriate salary. And so the rest of it has to be paid for locally. That's not to mention that the state doesn't provide an adequate number of teachers. Otherwise, we would be at 35 students per classroom, and we wouldn't be offering electives like AP courses and doing our own courses. So what the county has to do is they have to chip in additional teachers. We have about 500 additional employees that the county provides beyond what the state provides to provide the quality of education that we do. And the state gives us $0 for those folks. So it's a pretty complex formula. I always call it a Robin Hood formula, taking from wealthy communities or better than average communities and give it to other communities that are less well off or have less of the ability to generate dollars locally for school.
So the sales tax kind of reverses that a little bit. Maybe that's politically not correct to say. But,
no, you don't want to say it that way. The sales tax is for bricks and mortar, Dave, and that's some of the confusion. That the sales tax, if the folks decide to go this route, has to stay with bricks and mortar. It can't go over in the operational side, and that is so clear to everyone. And we need to keep it. We don't need to be muddying up that trip. And I want to touch on one thing, then you go on to your question. Dr. Looney mentioned there's over 500 teachers that we are not receiving any money for towards their salaries, towards their operation. So if you just use some simple math, I don't know what the average pay is for those teachers, but collectively it's around $50,000 that you would see an average. If you've got 500 times $50,000, the math is pretty simple to me. You're coming out of the gate that deep that you've got to make up before you ever get to the actual operation of his budget. And that's a lot of money. Kenny generates about $1 million, and this is $25 million. That's 25 cents on the tax rate that we're having to supplement because of the inequities of how the funding is coming out of Nashville.
all right, we'll leave it at that. Matt, pretty important subject for our business community. And the Chamber has taken a big role in trying to educate the community on the reasons we need this. Tell us why.
Sure, thanks Dave. And thanks Columbia State for hosting this event, greatly appreciate it, and Vanderbilt for presenting sponsor, and Dave for re-upping your contract as moderator too. We appreciate that.
Appreciate the contract.
That's right. And Mike started to say it well, is that our entire economic foundation is built on the school system. And we hear it time and time again. It's not just from companies that are relocating their operations here, it's from existing companies that are growing and trying to attract talent. We're working with a company out of the East Coast that would bring a fair number of jobs here, good salary jobs, and they were in town late last year, and we had a few days with them, and the most impactful part of the entire visit for that company, we were told afterwards, was that hour conversation they spent with Mike, talking about what it means to employees that would move here and what it means to the future pipeline of talent. that would come as a result of the great schools here. So we know that our tangible economic asset is our school system. And that's why when it comes to anything that's going to impact the schools, as a leadership organization, we're going to be involved and we're going to be engaged. In this case, we're going to be deeply engaged running a campaign because it is so important to our economic future. As the school goes, so goes our economy. And I think Roger's hit on it and you hit on it. This is part of a long-term solution, and it is the only part where people from outside the county can actually help shoulder the burden for growth for our schools right now. The one question I meant to ask Rogers a minute ago, and I'll circle back around and do that, Rogers. This proposal's designed to raise about 23 to 25 million a year. How much would we have to raise property taxes to generate that kind of revenue? That's a question that came in over the internet for us.
So approximately a penny generates $1 million of property tax.
Current tax rate is
$2.15 in the unincorporated area. If you're inside the city, Scott, some of these have to deal with. They get to take off some of the services that the county would not provide for them, usually in the area of solid waste and certainly in the area of highways. Our county highway department does not service the city roads in any of our cities. So you take off that, but it's $2.15, and you can multiply. You can say the budget is $1 million times that $2.15. That kind of generates some of the money that on the property side. So you have other fees and taxes that go into it, but it's $1 million.
Okay, so you would have to raise the taxes 23 to 25 cents to cover that, about a 10% increase.
I kind of doubt you to get that, Dave.
The county commission has kind of made it clear they don't want to see that kind of proposal on the table. I understand. So.
I'd like to add to that. I think it's really important as we debate this publicly. I don't foresee us being in a place where we don't build these schools, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not if the sales tax doesn't pass, then the schools don't get built. We're going to build the schools, or we're all going to see our property values decline and people start running. And so it's really about how we pay for it. So it really is a choice A or a choice B. Either it's sales tax as part of the solution or a more significant property tax. I don't see us not building the schools. We're not going to have kids going to school outside.
Right.
We're going to have classrooms. So it's really a choice of how we pay for it, not do we pay for it.
Right. And back to you again, Matt. In your discussions with companies that are looking to move here, that are looking to expand in Williamson County, where does the school system come up in the conversation, and how does that sound? Yeah. So these days in modern economic development, you all might have seen that Nashville is on the list, the top 20 cities for Amazon. And it's interesting. I mean, I've got a lot of, yeah, that's right. Nashville makes it on the front page. So, yeah, we made the cut. So Amazon validated us, I guess. But
Amazon soccer.
It's not Amazon soccer. We got soccer. But, you know, a lot of gimmicks that cities deployed to try to get on the list. Tucson sent Amazon cactus. Other cities did other really interesting things. But I think economic development is not about gimmicks. It's about things that are foundational to a community. And in what we do these days, it's all about talent to a community. Companies want to know that they have the talent they need to continue to grow their operations. And for us, that's a huge strategic advantage with the schools. So the first conversation is about talent. The last conversation is about talent. Talent is driven to this community because of the schools. Companies are driven to this community because of the talent. It's really that simple. And I credit Rogers and the leadership 20, 30 years ago who decided then, if we're going to be a really special place, we're going to focus on schools. And that has paid off year after year after year. Amazon has whittled they had proposals, I think, from 236 cities, and they've narrowed it down to 20.
Nashville's one of those 20. And Wednesday, Apple announced that they're going to build a headquarters somewhere outside of Silicon Valley. And so the circus begins again there to see where they're going to relocate or locate an additional regional headquarters. Some people think that the new tax law that was passed by Congress a couple of weeks ago is going to accelerate that trend because the quote high tax states didn't get as attractive a deal in the tax law because now they cannot, none of us can deduct our state and local tax that we pay, which they pay a lot more of than we do. So given that we have no income tax here in Tennessee, and Nissan thought Williamson County was a pretty good place to be, what happens if all of a sudden we start attracting other companies like that?
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, this has been part of our strategy for a long time. So I was part of a contingent early last year with the Nashville Chamber, the Nashville Technology Council, to go out to Silicon Valley and have some of those conversations about what would it take to look at this area, to look at some of your facilities. And again, certainly regulation plays a role, public safety plays a role, housing amenities, tourism options, historic preservation. They're all part of a puzzle, but again, it comes down to the talent piece. And we've got to convince those companies that this is a place where you can find your talent, have your pipeline of talent, and relocate your talent to. And that's why partnerships with Williamson County Schools, with MIT around an autonomous vehicle driving program, the drone program at Nolensville High, and the incredibly exciting entrepreneurship center that we're in partnership to build at the old Columbia State campus and by Franklin High are so important to make that case that this is a place where the kids, your employees' kids will get a great education, but not just that, you'll have this pipeline of talent that will come to help drive your company's growth in the future. So I think that Tennessee, because we're not a heavily regulated state, has had this advantage for years. Now it's a matter of convincing companies over time that this is a place where you'll be able to find talent.
It's time for the audience to start asking questions. And so I am going to circulate around, and the first hand I see is back here.
Okay.
And I will get to all of you that we can.
Yeah, I think you probably will.
Thank you. Question I have is we're expecting 20,000 more students in the next 10 years. I'd like to, and we're spending $300,000 of taxpayer money every year going to Williamson Inc. to encourage these companies to come into this area, which brings families in, which brings seniors in, which brings students in. And why not stop that process of encouraging companies to come into this area and instead leave the town the way it is without the heavy traffic? When I leave my place in the morning, I follow a school bus out lots of days. Every person getting on that school bus is an immigrant. I go down a little bit further on Lewisburg, and there's a apartment complex. Every single student that's getting on the bus at the apartment complex is a Mexican. Is this what we want, or can we eliminate the traffic and not encourage industry to come here? Thank you.
Who wants to tackle that one? Matt, why don't you start?
Mike, why don't you start? I'm happy to respond, but Mike grabbed the mic, so I'm interested to hear his response.
Well, first of all, I will say I think it's a privilege to serve the students that we serve. We do, I would say that our diversity is increasing in Williamson County Schools. I consider it a blessing. Many of you don't know this about me, but I served in the Marine Corps, and then I served in private industry, and this is kind of my third try at a job. If this doesn't work out, I'm going back to Walmart. No offense to those Walmart. I happen to believe either a community is green and growing and attracting people to the community, or it's dying. And from my perspective, as now a member of this community for 9 years, I would tell you, I think we should be counting our blessings that we're green and growing. It's certainly a managerial, administrative challenge for government officials, particularly those ones that are elected, to have to make these tough decisions about how they allocate resources. I have served in communities where the population is declining, and the conversation is very different. What do we do with all the infrastructure that we don't need anymore? You know, how do we get people to work in the stores and to serve the retired community because they're not willing to live here anymore? So, from my vantage point, we are on the winning side of the coin here, and I think we should continue to feed it.
Rogers?
For the last several years, Dave, I've asked a question to audiences, and so if you'll allow me to ask that question. If you're born and raised in Williamson County, raise your hand.
Two.
Born and raised, 2, 3?
Yeah.
So all of us are the problem. We moved in on those Tom Lawrences and a couple of the others that have lived in this area their whole life.
Yeah, and let me just talk about the economy. I'm not even going to address the question about immigrants, but let me talk about the economic impact of what happens. 60% of the people who live in this community aren't from this state. That's a great thing for our community. And it's not about growing for growth's sake. It's about bringing jobs where people can have careers. And these are our kids, our grandkids that can move back to this area. Instead of going to Charlotte, Atlanta, Chicago, they can come back here and have a career. That's why we do what we do. We do what we do to help raise the wages of everybody in this community so everybody has a chance for economic prosperity. And the single worst thing we could do is decide to close our doors and say, enough is enough. That is the beauty of this county. We're a welcoming, opening community, and that means to all people.
I think some of us get spoiled by the growth we have here, and I don't think there's anybody here that I could see that would address this any better than our state representative, Sam Whitson. And Sam, you talk to a lot of other state representatives from less fortunate counties, less fortunate areas, and they're dealing with different problems. Can you kind of contrast what it would be like if we didn't have this road problem?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity that you grabbed me out of my seat to comment on this. Listen, first of all, talking about the BEP, and Dr. Looney hit it right on the head. We send back, what, 60 cents on the dollar that we send up. And there's several reasons for that. At the state level, we have a moral and legal responsibility, to ensure that kid in Grundy County gets the same education as my 5 grandkids here in Williamson County. And so the way that formula works, they say our taxing ability in this county with the lowest property tax rate in Middle Tennessee drives us to get less funds back to ensure that child in Grundy County gets the same quality education. So there's more to it than a lot of folks realize. I lived in 9 different states over in a 26-year period, and Matt is right. I lived in Chicopee, Massachusetts. That town was dying. You do not want to live in a place like Chicopee, Massachusetts. If you're from Chicopee, I apologize, but to me it was a foreign tour. But Massachusetts. But again, there's my 2 sons who work for Mars Corporation moved to Williamson County for our schools. We are satisfied customers. They are satisfied customers, and I feel they add a lot to this community. I'm very proud that they're here. And again, going back to your question, the responsibility goes beyond just Williamson County. We are the economic engine for Tennessee, and we got to make sure we preserve our prosperity here. We do it right, we do it smartly, and I just look forward to the conversation as this going forward.
Let me come back around to Tom Miller. I should have asked the previous gentleman to tell us his name. Do you mind doing that, sir? It's not important. Stay anonymous, huh? Okay.
Thanks, Dave. I've got a twofold question to the mayor and to Matt Largen. But before that, I think it is self-evident that school funding needs to be done. Anybody who would disagree with more money from the school is either not left their home to see the growth that's going on around them or has not driven the roads of Williamson County. The need is there and it needs to be funded. My comment is that I think the sales tax is the wrong vehicle for funding that growth that is needed. I'm willing to be corrected, but from what the mayor just said, I talked yesterday with the property assessor. He said that the assessed value of property in Williamson County is $12,246 million. $12 billion. If my math is correct, and I was up at 3 o'clock this morning double checking my figures because I couldn't sleep, a 1 cent property tax increase on $13 billion is $122 million. A 1 cent increase, a 1 cent, not 1%, a 1 cent increase in the property tax rate would produce $122 million. Now the county has designated that about 56% of property tax revenue goes to schools. So 56% of $122 million is something in the neighborhood of $55 million. That in 1 year is more than what the sales tax increase would be over 3 years, or approximately, rounding numbers. So why would we want to, and my question to the mayor is, was a property tax increase considered? And I used 1 cent arbitrarily. I just had to have a number and I used 1 cent and it came out that way. Was a property tax increase seriously considered? And to Matt, did the chamber, or how would the chamber, Williamson Inc., respond to a proposed property tax increase? Property tax increase is a sustainable funding mechanism for the schools. $50-some million every year, not just $56 million spread over 3 years.
Rogers, you want to talk about the math there?
Try to talk a little bit about the math, Tom. So we do have $12 billion worth of assessed values. As you know, a home is taxed at 25%, and a business somewhere around 40%, utilities a little bit different. When you engage those kind of conversations, we have them every year, whether it's property taxes, whether it's new fees, whatever they may be. The direction that I was given, the direction that we have taken, is to ask the general public, would you allow us, by your vote, to raise the sales tax from 9.25 to 9.75, or at the local level, 0.5. The discussion on property taxes has certainly been there every single year when we set the budget. And Bobby and Betsy, I see a few of them sitting out in the audience. Every single year we go through this budgetary process trying to figure out which is the best avenue. For most of us, the property tax is the least favorite. Although, you're right, it generates a lot of money, but it also raises those taxes that we as a community have to pay. And they've chosen to say, Mayor, get out there, educate the people, let them make the decision that will help lessen the burden as we go down the road. You heard Dr. Looney say, this is not going to stop when you have a growing community such as we've got.
Matt, you want to?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Tom, for the question and for your support of schools. I mean, you're right. Everybody in this room and listening certainly supported the school funding. There's no question about that. From our standpoint, we did have conversations both as a staff and a board about different options to look at, conversations with Rogers, and we believe this is a step toward a long-term sustainable funding for the schools. It certainly isn't the only option, but for us, it's what solution is brought to the table that then goes before the voters. That's what we chose to support this. It's a solution on the table. I think the property tax conversation could be a subsequent conversation as well.
Got time for one more question, and this gentleman beside me has, you still want to ask?
Yeah, sure. Randy Malden, Franklin, Tennessee. Question for Dr. Looney. You mentioned earlier the average cost per student is about $6,000 per student. Can you give us a comparison of the operations costs that you know of, average for the state of Tennessee and for surrounding counties for Williamson County?
Well, let me clarify first. That's what the local taxes provide for students. Our per pupil expenditure for students in Williamson County is right at $9,000 based on the most recent report. This county runs about $600 in expenditures less per student than the state average. So the average schools district in Tennessee spends $600 more per pupil than we do. If you compare, well, that's statewide, what does it look like regionally? Rutherford County is very similar to us. Metro spends a good amount of money more than we do per pupil. So does Franklin Special and some other districts. So we're below, I think we're ranked in the bottom 35 to 40% in expenditures per pupil across the state. Franklin Special right here in Williamson County spends about $5,000 more per pupil than we do. But of course they're a smaller school district too, right? So we don't spend a lot of money per pupil. And the fact of the matter is Tennessee itself is like ranked 48th in the state, or in the country. So Tennessee's in the very bottom ranking, and then Williamson County's in the bottom ranking of Tennessee. So once again, your ROI is great. And I'm not complaining about our expenditures per people. What I am saying is we can't continue to provide the quality of education that we've been doing with kids sitting on the floor at lunch and having a classroom in the hallways. That's not a sustainable model for excellence.
Rogers?
If I could, the conversation this morning is for the most part centered around Dr. Looney and his charge from the Williamson County Public School System. But I think it's also important to know that the Franklin Special School District, which is K through 8, I think, if you do it K, they benefit out of this plan too by receiving $1 million additional money for their capital improvements. The County Commission, Dr. Looney, we do not have anything to say about them. The Franklin Special School District is a special school district, has full taxing authority by their school board members. But when you design a model, you want everybody to try to benefit if this is successful. And for Franklin Special School District and those people that pay those taxes, they'll receive over $1 million per year too.
Mayor, could you talk just real briefly about how the sales tax dollars would go specifically to schools and how a property tax would be across all government?
Quickly.
It's okay. I see 6 minutes.
So the tax rate is $2.15. $1, I may need to help me out here, $1.21 of the $2.15 goes to public schools. So when Jeff and Bobby and Betsy and all those people, they just vote on the tax rate. They expect us to divide that money that, like Tom was talking about, and so if you raise property taxes, not all of it goes towards schools. $1.21 out of $2.15 per year goes to them for their operation, and we fund 64% of their budget. Now, and this sales tax, as I did when I corrected you, is 100% going to the bricks and mortars, and that's a huge difference. you get to make the choice.
Great. I hope we've answered questions here today. Our guest will be here for hopefully a few minutes after we wind up the show, and if you have additional questions, you can ask them. We've got some county commissioners here in the audience. If you would, I see at least 2 or 3. If you would stand up and let's identify you. Greg Lawrence, Jeff Ford, Bobby Howitt, Betsy Hester. Did we catch everybody? If you've got questions, they're good ones to talk to. And we hope that, appreciate y'all coming this morning, and hope that we can answer the questions that the folks have. Dr. Shauna Jackson, come up here just a minute if you will. Speaking of education, one of the huge things that's happened in this community in the last couple of 3 years is the opening of this campus, and we're excited to be here this morning, and just want to say thank you for having us. Tell us in just a capsule, if you would, how it's going.
Okay. Good morning, and I want to thank Williamson Inc. for the opportunity to host this, and what a great crowd. For those of you that haven't been on a campus, this is the first phase of a 9-building campus. So the first 3 buildings are here. Building number 4 is actually on the list, and we're hoping to get funding. Just like the schools, our enrollment has exceeded all expectations. We thought we'd have 1,600 students the first year. We had over 1,800, and we had over 2,100 students this fall. And we know that that will continue to grow. So if you have not had a chance, we want to offer you a chance to take a tour. There'll be some of us available afterwards. And if not today, any day, we would welcome you to come and learn more about the campus. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. We are proud of this facility, and I know everybody associated with Columbia State is. We had some nice things to eat as we came in this morning. Compliments of emblem. If you ladies would come up here, we're going to have a drawing, and someone is going to take a prize home after we get the fishbowl up here. Donya? While they are making their way forward, I'm going to go ahead and thank, in addition to the audience this morning, several other entities and people that are important to making this show happen. In addition to Creed Henderson and Heather and the crew from Channel 3, Tom Lawrence and WAKM, making sure it's going out live on the radio as we speak. The Columbia State, and then there are a couple of sponsors that are very important to this, Vanderbilt University, and I think it's First Tennessee Bank. Help me out, somebody. I didn't write it down. Am I right?
AT&T?
Oh, gosh, okay.
Griffin?
My apologies.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you, AT&T.
I try to write everything down. AT&T will give you extra credit next month and from here on. Identify yourselves and who you are, and then what we're drawing for.
Sure thing.
Donya?
Dania Tykhanovich.
And Melania Armenta.
We're from Emblem Apartments. We're a brand new mid-rise that is right across the street from the Galleria.
Okay.
And we would love to host the town hall in the future. So, or if not, you guys are more than welcome to stop by. We have 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. We really want to set the standard high for multifamily living. And so the first drawing, we're going to do a $25 gift card. Actually, we should do Rebecca Melton.
Oh, there we go.
Good.
That's great.
Let's go.
Then you want to do the next one? All right, the next one's for the $50 gift card.
Ben Jones.
Ben Jones.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for the food. Was the food good?
We've got honey extras, so if you want to grab one on the way out.
Great. So much appreciate all of you being here. We look forward to being back here on February 6th. And our guest on February 6th will be our Williamson County Legislative Delegation. State Senator Jack Johnson, Representative Sam Whitson will be back, along with Representative Glenn Cassida and Charles Sargent. So if you will, be back here on the 6th. Look forward to having you again. Thank you very much.